we could see that in recent years there has been some kind of growing interest among these policymakers to constantly seek some kind of reliable and comparable data. We could see that many countries like UK have been using this evidence-based policy making and practices across various domains. Like they have been using it for education, healthcare, and even they used it for some kind of crime education as well. It is very important to make people at the center, and people's development is at the core. I will be speaking on this evidence-based policy making and how it could help in better citizen outcomes. So we could see that in recent years there has been some kind of growing interest among these policymakers to constantly seek some kind of reliable and comparable data that can be used to base this policy designs and to respond to the socio-economic and the demographic challenges. So we could see that many countries like UK have been using this evidence-based policy making and practices across various domains. Like they have been using it for education, healthcare, and even they used it for some kind of crime education as well. Sorry, crime reduction as well. So it has been there, and we could see that. But even though we could see that this is a kind of growing interest in ways of strengthening the links between this social research, social science research, and connecting the real world problems. But we can't say that this is totally new kind of phenomena, because when we look into the Indian historical text and all, something like this Kautilya's Arthashastra and all, we could see that the kings at that time goes to this local places or meet these locals in disguise, where it helps them to get some real life, real feel of what the locals are feeling or his disciples are feeling. So it was there uh, in a different way, I could say. And after coming into this democracy and all, we could say that the situation changed because people are at the center, and it is very important to make people at the center, and people's development is at the core. So everything has been revolving around it, and and even in that context also, because we have around 1.44 billion people in our country. And so in this context, I believe that it is very imperative to understand or to bring or to use just evidence based things in policy making, because otherwise if we don't bring about this evidence based policy making and all, it is a kind of waste for the resources. So in that level it is very important. So this evidence base itself has a great potential to achieve the goals of others social dimensions as well. So when we look at how this evidence base has been used in this policy making, so initially we could say that it was all this randomized control trials, RCTs and all, because people consider that it is synonymous to this RCT is synonymous to this evidence and all. So but later we could see that there is some change, and now it is not that, because evidence, while this evidence is totally crucial, we could see that understanding is equally important. So from where this understanding comes, so evidence includes, so understanding can grow in various dimensions, right? So this can be from experiences, observations, reasoning, statistical analysis. All these things can be we can bring about understanding. So when we say about evidences, it is also about understanding and using these understanding as evidences. So we could say that there is a need for further thought on how this evidences can be influenced, can be used to influence the policies. Policy decisions at the same time involves this value judgment as well. So we should try to balance in between. And when it comes to being myself a researcher, I would like also to mention that when we try to give some kind of policy advices to the decision makers, being a researcher, one thing that comes to my mind is that we are not always that well equipped to offer policy advices because we are not that expert in the operational details or the inherent political nature of this policy decisions. So that is one thing that being researcher we have to develop, because researchers conduct this kind of evidence-based researchers and all, and from their researchers we will be getting evidences, and this will be used in this policy making and all. And while we say all these things, uh, we could also see that there is some kind of relationship hindrance maybe between the policymakers and the researchers as well, because we lack some kind of effective communication and collaboration between the researchers and the policymakers, because mostly even though we have some kind of global context or global researchers going on, when it comes to countries like India, we can't totally involve, or we can't totally take the global data, because we need some local context of researchers. So it is in this context that we need some local researchers, or locally applicable researchers, that we need to do all these things. So these are all connected. And so one thing that came to my mind while I was thinking of this is that evidence is all about fact, but when it comes to the policy, it is all about political. So, given the fact that vast majority has failed to engage with the political nature of decision making, and how this influences the way in which the evidences will be used, or even it can be misused in this political areas. So that we have been seeing, right? So how this is misused or even used. So there is a growing concern, or we should explore the concerns of evidence advocates, that this political interest should not be driving for this misuse or manipulation of evidences, or as well as there are some counter concerns for this statement, saying that some scholars are of the opinion that there should be some, or how this evidence-based policies can depoliticize this political advices. So when I look into this, I could understand that both these concerns reflect some forms of biases, but in different ways. So if we look at the first one, it is a kind of technical bias where the ethical principle of the evidence-based thing is evidence-based best practices is not used, because it is being used, the data from the, or the evidence from the research is being used or manipulated, so that is against the ethical standards. And then the next one could be the other thing, that is some kind of issue bias, I could say, because it is on issue bias in how appeals of evidence can shift some kind of political debates to particular questions, or marginalized policy relevant social concerns. So these are things. So I believe in this context of what comes this what constitute good evidences for policy, as well as good use of evidences. So both are important, and we should recognize, or within this policy process, and we should consider how to build some kind of evidence advisory in institutions that embed key principles of both good practices and democratic presentations. So we could see that there are a lot of challenges when we look into evidence-based practice, evidence-based policy making. So despite all these challenges, there is a value in bringing more evidence to bear on public policy. So I'd like to say that what works is not equivalent to what should be. So there is a difference. And when we consider all these things, we could say that there is something called good governance of evidence. So in total, there is a concept called good governance of evidence. It is a kind of concept that represent the use of rigorous, systematic, and technical valid pieces of evidence. So in total, we can come to a point, or in as a concluding remark, I could say that good governance of evidence is what is mattering in our scenario, because we could see that there are a lot of researches happening, even funded research. And again, that is another dimension that we have to discuss maybe in later, where the fund comes and how the researches are being happen research is being done. So all these things we could see. But when it comes to the democratic practices and all, we could see that how this good governance of evidence is done. So that's what I would like to focus on this discussion. Thank you.